Hello, is this Hank?
Yes, it is.
Hello, sir. This is Dustin Wilmus from KMSU Radio. How you doing today?
Very well.
Excellent. Is this still a good time to ask you a few questions?
Sure.
All right. Well, I want to kind of get a sense of your early days, I guess, before we get started. And I know eventually you wound up in acting, but kind of took a different approach. It started out as a power lifter and even working in karate.
Oh, that was much later. My younger years, I was on the streets. I lived on the streets of Harlem.
So is that kind of how the karate and the powerlifting started, just kind of keeping yourself safer on the streets?
I wanted to learn to be a better street fighter, and I got involved in a karate class. And instead of learning to be a better street fighter, I learned humility and respect.
Well, and I know you actually, we're in Minnesota here. I know you were even a pro wrestler for a while, the Minnesota Kid. Can you tell us a little bit about how that started?
I'd never been to Minnesota, but that was the name that was given to me when I broke in as a pro wrestler. I was called the Minnesota Farm Boy.
So it seems kind of just like a wrestling thing, I guess. A guy from, a power lifter from Harlem is the Minnesota Kid.
Exactly.
So where did you work when you were a wrestler? Was it out on the East Coast? Or?
Oh, it started on the East Coast. I'm originally from New York. I was represented by a tremendous producer in wrestling. And then I started branching out and wound up wrestling just about all over the country, including Mexico City.
So then I got to ask you, Hank, how did that land into the acting world? Was it just kind of a seamless transition, or was it kind of a weird circumstance? Or?
A weird circumstance. I was a pro wrestler, decided at one point, because I was always in trouble as a kid, I always had in mind I wanted to become a cop. In New York, I became a cop, very short-lived, because when I was on the job, a friend of mine who was a comedian, his wife was Nat Hiken's secretary. Nat Hiken created the Bilko show, the Martha Ray show, and then created Car 54. They were looking for really unorthodox types, and I got the audition, and I walked in and met Nat Hiken, and he said, "You're Ed Nicholson." And I said, No, I'm Hank Garrett. He said, "Just the kind of dummy I'm looking for. Ed Nicholson is the character I'm hoping to find."
Yeah, so I can't imagine you thought that would lead to, a 50-plus year career in acting after being on that show.
Oh, it sure did. It opened up the world for me. Prior to that, I was a comedian. I had started working a resort area called the Catskills. I started working there when I was 16. And while I was going to school, working the Catskills as a comedian, I started training for wrestling. I met a guy who was the world champ. He was the Olympic champ, gold medalist, John Davis, and he started training me. I became a power lifter, a very good power lifter because of his tutelage. And so all these things started just falling into place. The guy that got me off the street was Sammy Davis Jr.
Did you know him personally, or how did that come about?
My mom and dad were fruit and vegetable peddlers. They sold on the streets from a push cart. And one of their customers was a man who was the mayor of Harlem, a gentleman by the name of Willie Bryant. My mother was crying to him that I was always in trouble, which was true. And he asked if he could take me to dinner. He did. He took me to dinner, and he said, "We're going someplace. I want you to meet someone." And we went to a place called the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and Sammy Davis Jr. was headlining there. And we went backstage to meet Sammy Davis. Sammy looked at me and said, "Mr. Bryant said you're either going to go to prison or you're going to die." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, the way you're headed, you wind up unless you change right now." And they got me a job as a band boy, working for an all-black orchestra. And band boy, you put out the chairs, the music, the charts, and after the job, you just return everything to its proper position. And so that's how I was introduced to show business.
Yeah, it's definitely not your average route, I guess, to get into the business.
Not at all. No, I never did anything as planned. So it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Of course, 20 some odd years later, after they got me the job, I was opening for Tony Bennett at the Sands in Las Vegas, and in the audience was Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Peter Lawford, and Sammy Davis Jr. And after the show, Sam came up to me and said, "You're a very funny cat. Where do I know you from? You look so familiar." And I told him, I said, "I'm the kid that you said is going to go to either prison or die." And both of us just broke down and we cried. And I wound up being Tony Bennett's opening act for 4 years. And it's just been amazing. God has been good.
Yeah, that's definitely quite the resume you've had over the years. And we mentioned starting out on Car 54. I know you've done tons of other shows over the years, Knight Rider and Dukes of Hazzard and Full House. I know that with the comedy background, did you have comedy as kind of your favorite, or was it just anything that you could get?
No, comedy is still my favorite thing to do. It's an immediate situation. You get a laugh, and you couldn't get any higher than having an audience laugh at what you're selling. And it's just an amazing feeling. And as an actor, I wound up winning the New York Film Critics Award for the movie 3 Days of the Condor with Robert Redford.
Again, we're on the phone today with actor Hank Garrett. I got to ask you, Hank, I know this wasn't really a funny movie, but your memories of working with Charles Bronson on Death Wish, that was quite the movie when it came out.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, Bronson was kind of a very private guy. He would shoot a scene. He would just take off. He would go to his dressing room, and then he'd come back when ready to shoot the next scene.
Well, I know you've had a lot of roles in a lot of other big films over the years, Amityville Horror and, Exorcist 2 and Jazz Singer, but is it possible for you to maybe pick a favorite film that you've been in, or maybe one you're most proud of?
Wow. It has to be Condor. Working with Robert Redford was, for me, the acme. He's an amazing guy who was giving, and also I had a television series with James Earl Jones. It was short-lived, and it was a show called Paris. He was a captain of the police department. I was his boss. And working with James, I learned so much about acting. But it was an amazing, amazing time of my life.
Well, I got to say, Hank, for me personally, I was a kid in the 80s, so for me it was a lot of your voice work, working on G.I. Joe and Garfield and some of those cartoons. I think that I really kind of first heard about you.
Oh, thank you. I wound up, Sid Caesar, I was a protege of Sid. Accidentally, I was sneaking in to watch his rehearsals, and he heard me laughing from the balcony, which no one was supposed to be in. And he said, "What are you doing?" And he called me down, and he said, "Sit here." And I sat there, and I learned to do dialectic gibberish. And I wound up in London that was the week that was with David Frost, and I did dialectic gibberish. Each week, I was a different character.
So was that something, I guess, that was maybe easier to do, the voiceover stuff, than having to do the grind of being on camera?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, because there was, I didn't have to worry about being on time with the script, knowing the lines perfectly. You had a script in front of you when you're doing voice work.
It does seem like, especially in the 80s, that was such a fruitful time, I guess, for voiceovers and people doing animated stuff.
Yes, it was a wonderful, wonderful time of life. In fact, I'm just running out right now. My agent just came in, and I've got to go to an audition.
Excellent. Well, we can definitely wrap it up. I appreciate you taking the time out today.
Terrific. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.